I think Sophie is almost the perfect royal because she has had a life before the royal family.
Duchess Sophie was long considered Queen Elizabeth II's most trusted confidant. While their bond was legendary, Prince William has reportedly sparked a royal firestorm by revealing a secret inheritance left specifically to Sophie. The private nature of this gift has left Queen Camilla reportedly furious, fueling rumors of a rift over the late monarch's personal estate. So why was Camilla bypassed, and what did the Queen leave behind? Join us today as we dive into the details of this royal bombshell that is shaking the palace. The royal inheritance that has Camilla furious. It has long been known inside royal circles that Queen Elizabeth II valued loyalty above almost everything else. Those who earned her trust often found themselves drawn into a very small, very private inner circle. So when Prince William reportedly revealed that the late monarch had left a special inheritance to Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, many observers felt the decision made perfect sense. Yet the move has stirred tension behind palace walls. Why was Sophie singled out? And why was Queen Camilla seemingly left out of the equation? Keep watching to find out. Part of the answer may lie in the complicated history between Camilla and the late Queen. For years, their relationship carried the shadow of controversy, largely because of the turbulent beginning of Camilla's relationship with then Charles III. While time eventually softened the public's view, and Camilla was formally welcomed into the royal fold, insiders have long suggested that the Queen's trust had to be earned slowly and carefully. Sophie, on the other hand, built a very different bond with the monarch over the years. In royal circles, she was often described as one of the Queen's most dependable allies, someone who quietly supported the crown without chasing headlines or attention. Their relationship grew so close that Sophie reportedly addressed the Queen in a deeply personal way, affectionately calling her Mama, a small detail that spoke volumes about the warmth between them. To understand why this story has drawn so much attention, it also helps to look at where Sophie stands within the royal family today. Following the death of Queen Elizabeth II in September 2022, Sophie's role within the monarchy began to shift. At the time, she was still known as the Countess of Wessex, married to the Queen's youngest son, Prince Edward, Duke of Edinburgh. But there had long been discussion about another title waiting in the wings. According to reporting from The Telegraph, Edward was widely expected to inherit his late father, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh's historic title of Duke of Edinburgh. The idea was not a sudden one. In fact, it was something Philip himself had reportedly hoped for, believing the title should one day pass to his youngest son. For a brief moment after Queen Elizabeth's passing at Balmoral on September 8th, the title technically passed to Prince Charles. But with Charles immediately ascending the throne as King Charles III, the future of the Duke of Edinburgh title once again became a decision only the monarch could make. That meant the final choice rested with King Charles himself. If Charles chose to follow through with his father's wishes, Edward would become the Duke of Edinburgh, and Sophie would step into a title that carried enormous historical weight. It was the same title Queen Elizabeth herself had held after her marriage to Prince Philip in 1947, long before she became the monarch. For many royal watchers, the symbolism was impossible to ignore. The title linked Sophie directly to the early years of the Queen's own marriage and the foundation of the modern royal family. Eventually, in 2023, the decision was made. King Charles granted the title of Duke of Edinburgh to Prince Edward, officially making Sophie the Duchess of Edinburgh. But stepping into that role came with its own emotional weight. In a rare interview with The Mirror during a visit to Bosnia and Herzegovina, Sophie opened up about what the moment meant to her. The title, she explained, felt deeply significant because of its connection to the late Queen. Sophie noted that many people alive today might not remember that the Queen herself had once been the Duchess of Edinburgh during the early years of her marriage to Prince Philip, long before she ascended the throne. It was a reminder that the title carried history, legacy, and a connection to the Queen's personal story. But Sophie also addressed something else that has followed her for years: the media's frequent description of her as the royal family's secret weapon. Rather than rejecting the label, she treated it with humor. Flying under the radar had always suited her personality, she explained, joking that being called a secret weapon was flattering in its own way, although perhaps a little ironic if it meant staying so hidden that people barely noticed. At the same time, Sophie acknowledged that the royal dynamic was changing. With fewer working members of the family taking on official duties, she admitted that her once quiet role was becoming more visible, whether she intended it or not. And that shift may explain why the story surrounding Queen Elizabeth's reported private inheritance has captured so much attention. But the real reason Sophie meant so much to the Queen is a story few people truly understand. Keep watching to see how that remarkable bond began. Why Duchess Sophie held a special place in Queen Elizabeth II's heart. Over the years, a quiet understanding developed between Queen Elizabeth II and Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, one that gradually set their relationship apart from many others within the royal household. Ingrid Seward revealed in an interview with OK magazine that, with the exception of the Queen's own daughter, Anne, Princess Royal, Elizabeth was closer to Sophie than any of the other royal women in the family. Over time, the Queen came to see Sophie not just as a daughter-in-law, but as someone she could truly confide in. Elizabeth reportedly admired how grounded Sophie remained, despite the royal life she had married into. Seward explained that the Queen saw her as refreshingly down-to-earth, someone who never demanded extravagant security or excessive royal privilege. In a world often shaped by rigid protocol and layers of formality, Sophie carried herself without pretension, and the Queen deeply appreciated that simplicity. In fact, Seward suggested that Elizabeth began to see Sophie almost as a surrogate daughter, someone whose presence felt natural within the royal household rather than forced by tradition. Other royal insiders have echoed that same sentiment. Royal expert Katie Nicholl also spoke about the relationship between Sophie and the Queen, describing it as one of the most dependable bonds inside the monarchy. Sophie never treated her royal responsibilities as a burden. Instead, she stepped forward whenever support was needed, doing so with enthusiasm and a calm, steady presence. Nicholl explained that Sophie approached her role with genuine warmth, always offering help with a cheerful attitude that made her presence reassuring rather than overwhelming. Over time, that reliability built something incredibly valuable inside the royal family: trust. Elizabeth did not just rely on Sophie, she trusted her completely. That trust revealed itself in small but telling moments behind palace doors. According to courtiers who spoke to OK magazine, Sophie once managed to convince the Queen to sit down and watch the popular Netflix series The Crown. For a monarch whose life had been dramatized and dissected by the entire world, the idea might seem almost unbelievable. Yet the fact that Sophie could persuade Elizabeth to watch it spoke volumes about the relaxed, comfortable dynamic they shared. But their connection went even deeper than shared humor or light-hearted conversations. Seward explained that Sophie and the Queen bonded over a mutual fascination with military history, a subject that fascinated Elizabeth throughout her life. It became one of the many topics that allowed their conversations to stretch far beyond the typical small talk of royal gatherings. At one point, Sophie even traveled to the First World War battlefields and museums across northern France, places the Queen herself could no longer visit. While there, Sophie reportedly called Elizabeth directly, describing what she was seeing and sharing the experience in real time. It was a moment of connection, but one that revealed how naturally their relationship had grown over the years. Nicholl explained that the Queen quickly recognized Sophie as a sensible young woman who understood the delicate structure of the royal family. Sophie knew exactly where she stood within the hierarchy of the institution, often referred to as the firm, and she never attempted to disrupt it. Even in the early days of her royal life, when Sophie faced moments of public scrutiny and small controversies, Elizabeth stood firmly by her side. The Queen's support made it clear that Sophie had already earned her place within the inner circle, and as the years passed, that trust only seemed to deepen.
By the Queen that Sophie is the real thing. She's someone who can carry on doing the sort of work that the Queen did.
Now, even after Queen Elizabeth's passing, Sophie continues to play an important role within the royal family. Many observers have begun referring to her as the monarchy's secret weapon, a royal figure who rarely seeks attention, but consistently provides stability behind the scenes. That steady presence has reportedly extended into some of the family's most delicate relationships. Sophie has taken on the role of peacekeeper between Prince William and Prince Harry, offering calm guidance in a family that has struggled to bridge deep divisions. At the same time, Her bond with Catherine, Princess of Wales, has grown stronger, with many insiders describing their relationship as something close to a sisterly connection. That support became especially visible during the difficult period when Catherine faced her cancer diagnosis, with Sophie standing firmly beside her throughout the ordeal. But how did someone who once lived a completely ordinary life become one of the Queen's most trusted confidants? Let's take a closer look at how Sophie's royal story first began. From chance meeting to royal confidant, Sophie's story. Long before palace insiders began whispering that Sophie would become one of Queen Elizabeth's most trusted confidants, her story with the royal family actually began in a far more ordinary way. In 1987, while working at Capital Radio, Sophie Rhys-Jones first crossed paths with Prince Edward, the youngest son of Queen Elizabeth II, and Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. At the time, the meeting seemed almost incidental. Edward was dating one of Sophie's friends, and their introduction was brief, polite, and hardly the kind of moment anyone would expect to shape the future of the monarchy. For several years, their lives simply moved in different directions. But fate has a way of bringing people back together. In 1993, Sophie and Edward met again during a promotional shoot for the Prince Edward Summer Challenge, a charity initiative designed to raise funds and awareness for young people. This time, something clicked. The casual acquaintance from years earlier suddenly turned into something far more meaningful, and before long the two began a relationship. At first, they managed to keep things relatively private, but as their connection deepened, curiosity around the young royal couple began to grow. The media, always eager for a royal love story, started speculating about whether the relationship might eventually lead to marriage. By December 1993, those rumors had become so persistent that Prince Edward felt compelled to address them directly. In a rare move, he wrote a letter to newspaper editors, denying that any wedding plans were in motion and asking the press to respect their privacy. For a time, the strategy worked. Their relationship continued away from the glare of constant speculation. But 5 years later, everything changed. In December 1998, Edward and Sophie traveled together to the Bahamas for a vacation. It was there that Edward finally asked the question that would officially tie Sophie's life to the royal family forever. The proposal itself was as elegant as it was personal.
Sophie, on quite a few occasions, on official engagements, she's a very genuine person. What you see is what you get.
Edward presented Sophie with an engagement ring featuring a 2-carat oval diamond, flanked by 2 heart-shaped gemstones, all set in 18-carat white gold. The ring, designed by the historic royal jewelers Asprey and Gerard, carried an estimated value of over £100,000. Just weeks later, on January 6, 1999, the couple publicly announced their engagement, sending royal watchers into a frenzy of anticipation. But even before the wedding bells rang, one quiet detail had already hinted at the Queen's growing affection for Sophie. From the early stages of her relationship with Edward, Sophie reportedly developed a warm connection with Queen Elizabeth II. In fact, the bond grew so quickly that Sophie was even permitted to use royal apartments at Buckingham Palace before she was officially engaged to Edward, a privilege rarely granted to someone outside the royal family. It was a small gesture, but one that spoke volumes. Then, on June 19, 1999, the couple's long-awaited wedding finally took place at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. The ceremony itself marked a noticeable departure from tradition. Unlike the grand, highly formal weddings of Edward's older siblings, which had been held at Westminster Abbey or St. Paul's Cathedral, Edward and Sophie opted for something far more intimate. Yet despite its smaller scale, the wedding captured the attention of the world. An estimated 200 million viewers tuned in globally to watch the ceremony, proving that even a quieter royal wedding could still captivate audiences everywhere. On the very same day, another important royal decision unfolded. Just hours before the ceremony began, Prince Edward was granted the hereditary title of Earl of Wessex, along with the subsidiary title of Viscount Severn. The latter carried a personal touch, referencing the Welsh heritage within Sophie's family roots. From that moment forward, the couple would officially be known as their Royal Highnesses, the Earl and Countess of Wessex. Following the celebration, Edward and Sophie retreated to Balmoral Castle for their honeymoon, enjoying a brief moment of calm before stepping into their new public roles within the monarchy. After returning, they settled into their private residence at Bagshot Park in Surrey, a sprawling estate that would become their family home. While Bagshot Park served as their personal retreat, their official offices and London base remained at Buckingham Palace, placing them firmly within the working structure of the royal household. But royal life, as many quickly learn, is never without its challenges.
I think Sophie is almost the perfect royal because she has had a life before the royal family. She has been one of us.
In December 2001, Sophie faced a deeply difficult moment when she was rushed to the King Edward VII's hospital after suddenly feeling unwell. Doctors soon discovered she was suffering from an ectopic pregnancy, a serious condition that required immediate medical intervention. The pregnancy could not be saved, and the loss marked one of the first major personal trials the couple faced as members of the royal family. Yet even greater challenges were still ahead. 2 years later, on November 8, 2003, Sophie gave birth prematurely to her daughter, Lady Louise, after suffering a sudden placental abruption that placed both mother and child in serious danger. The situation escalated so quickly that Sophie had to undergo an emergency cesarean section at Frimley Park Hospital, while Prince Edward rushed back from an overseas visit to Mauritius. In the middle of the crisis, an alarming error also occurred. Surrey police had been notified when Sophie first began experiencing severe cramps, but officers mistakenly assumed an ambulance had already been called. As a result, no emergency vehicle was dispatched for 30 minutes, a delay the police force later publicly apologized for. Thankfully, both Sophie and her daughter recovered from the ordeal. Several years later, the family welcomed another child. On December 17, 2007, Sophie returned to Frimley Park Hospital, where she again delivered by cesarean section, giving birth to her son James, who at the time held the title Viscount Severn and is now known as the Earl of Wessex. Throughout these years, questions continued circulating within royal circles about Edward's title. Unlike his brothers, who had each been granted dukedoms at the time of their weddings, Edward had received the title of Earl of Wessex instead. Constitutional experts debated the unusual choice, but palace insiders revealed that a longer plan had always been in motion. Prince Philip himself had expressed a wish that Edward would one day inherit the title Duke of Edinburgh, and eventually, that wish was honored. On March 10, 2003, King Charles III formally granted Prince Edward the title of Duke of Edinburgh for life, finally fulfilling the vision Prince Philip had set decades earlier. But while Sophie's story inside the royal family began with her marriage to Prince Edward and was strengthened by her remarkably close bond with Queen Elizabeth II, her place within the monarchy is defined by far more than just those two relationships. So where exactly does Sophie stand among the rest of the royal family today? Stick with us as we take a closer look at her position in the royal fold. Where Duchess Sophie stands in the modern royal family. If Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, truly held such a trusted place in Queen Elizabeth II's inner circle, then another question naturally begins to surface. How does she fit into the complicated web of relationships that now define the modern royal family? Because while Sophie's bond with the late Queen was famously warm, that same level of closeness does not appear to exist with everyone else inside the palace walls. And one relationship in particular has drawn attention over the years: her dynamic with Queen Camilla. On the surface, the two women appear perfectly cordial. They stand together at royal events, exchange polite smiles, and carry out their duties without a hint of open tension. But according to body language expert Judy James, their interactions suggest something a little more reserved beneath the surface. Speaking to Express, James explained that although Sophie and Camilla are sisters-in-law, their body language rarely reveals the kind of natural warmth you might expect from two people who are truly close. Instead, what observers often see is a polite formality. James noted that during their public appearances together, there are very few body language signals that would suggest a deep personal connection. Close friends often mirror each other's gestures without even realizing it, reflecting shared energy or emotional understanding. But between Sophie and Camilla, that mirroring is largely absent. Their interactions appear respectful and professional, yet noticeably restrained. That does not mean there is hostility between them. Far from it. In fact, James pointed out that both women are practical, duty-driven figures who understand the responsibility of supporting the crown. In many ways, they approach their roles with the same seriousness, yet their personalities could hardly be more different. James described them as almost polar opposites, two individuals with very different temperaments who nonetheless understand that unity within the monarchy must always come first. In moments when the royal family needs to project stability, she suggested, both women are more than capable of putting personal dynamics aside and presenting a united front, sharing smiles and conversation whenever the moment calls for it. But while Sophie's relationship with Camilla may remain polite and somewhat distant, there is another royal bond that appears far more relaxed and natural: her friendship with Catherine, Princess of Wales. Over the years, Sophie and Catherine have been seen sharing genuine moments of warmth during royal outings, often laughing together in ways that feel far less formal than many royal interactions. The connection between them has gradually developed into something that insiders frequently describe as a sisterly relationship. One of the earliest public glimpses of their easy rapport came in 2012 during the London Olympic Games. Catherine had taken on a prominent role in supporting the event, attending several competitions throughout the summer. At one of those appearances, Sophie was seated right beside her as they watched the Paralympic rowing competition. Cameras captured the two women chatting and laughing together in the stands, their relaxed interaction standing out in a setting often dominated by royal protocol. The pattern continued in the years that followed. In 2016, the pair once again appeared side by side at Wimbledon, an event Catherine has long considered one of her favorites. As they watched the famous tennis tournament unfold, their shared reactions and animated conversation once again revealed a comfortable familiarity between them. Then came a moment that royal watchers still remember. During the Royal Ascot in 2017, Sophie stumbled slightly while climbing into a carriage, nearly tumbling towards Catherine in the process. Instead of an awkward moment, the near mishap dissolved into laughter as the two women burst into giggles together. A brief glimpse of humor that reminded everyone that even royals can find themselves in unexpectedly clumsy situations. Those moments may seem small, but they reveal something important about Sophie's place within the royal family. She has a way of putting people at ease, and in recent years, that quality has become more valuable than ever, because the last few years have been anything but calm for the monarchy. King Charles III ascended the throne immediately after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, stepping into a role that carries enormous pressure and scrutiny. At the same time, tensions between Prince William and Prince Harry have played out publicly in ways few could have imagined, while the scandal surrounding Prince Andrew has cast an even longer shadow over the royal household. Amid all of that turbulence, Sophie has emerged as one of the monarchy's most dependable figures. Royal historian Marlene Koenig noted in an interview with Express that King Charles is understood to hold Sophie in very high regard. Unlike many royal figures who attract controversy or criticism, Sophie has built a reputation for steady dedication and reliability. Koenig explained that while the public rarely sees what happens behind palace doors, Sophie appears to be deeply respected within the family itself. There are no scandals attached to her name. She willingly takes on new charitable patronages, travels where she is needed, and consistently represents the United Kingdom with professionalism. For a king who is known to be detail-orientated and sometimes demanding, that kind of reliability is invaluable. Sophie's willingness to roll up her sleeves and simply get the work done has made her one of the monarchy's most trusted team players. And that trust extends to another important relationship inside the royal family: Prince William. Although William maintains a composed and measured public image, insiders say the pressures surrounding the ongoing rift with his brother Harry have tested even his famously controlled demeanor. Moments like the tense text message exchange shown in the documentary Harry and Meghan have only deepened public curiosity about the fracture between the two brothers. Yet amid that strain, William's connection with Sophie has remained remarkably strong. According to royal editor Rebecca English, the Prince and Princess of Wales often spend private time with Prince Edward and Sophie. The two families share many similarities. Both couples are senior working royals. Both are raising young families. and both understand the immense responsibility that comes with supporting the crown. English noted that William has become a strong supporter of his uncle Edward and his dependable wife Sophie, with the two households frequently spending time together away from the public eye. Another insider described Sophie's presence within the family as something quietly calming. In a royal household, often marked by tension, she brings a sense of steadiness that many appreciate. But even Sophie's calm personality does not guarantee instant friendship with every royal relative. Take her relationship with Princess Anne. Both women are famously hard-working members of the monarchy, each known for carrying out countless engagements in service of the crown. Yet according to body language expert Judy James, their interactions suggest that their personalities may not always blend naturally. Anne is known for her famously reserved demeanor, often appearing cool and composed in public. Sophie, on the other hand, has a more open and cheerful energy, frequently displaying a bright smile and a lively presence during royal appearances. James observed that when the two women appear together, their body language sometimes reflects those differences. During one outing, Sophie's posture seemed slightly eager and animated, almost as if she were trying to bridge the gap with friendly enthusiasm. Meanwhile, Anne leant back in her seat with her characteristic composure, quietly observing the crowd. While Sophie maintained a polite royal smile, Anne simply raised her eyebrows and kept her lips closed, creating a dynamic that felt more like two very different personalities sharing the same space, rather than close companions. None of this suggests open conflict, but it does reveal something fascinating about Sophie's role inside the royal family. She moves carefully through a complex web of personalities, maintaining calm relationships even when others clash. In a monarchy that has weathered scandals, rivalries, and public scrutiny in recent years, that steady presence has quietly made Sophie one of the most reliable figures behind palace walls, someone who continues to hold the trust of the institution at a time when stability matters more than ever. With the royal family facing so many internal tensions in recent years, could Sophie be becoming one of the monarchy's most important stabilizing figures behind the scenes? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.